The voice of the drum calls. It sings a song of those who came before us and those to come. A song of survival and strength. A song of participation and voice. A song that calls us together. When we come together and participate in the 2010 census, we use this tool as the voice of all our Native people. Our voice. It is in our hands. 2010 census.
And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, March. All right, let's start with April. All right. And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, April 6th. And we begin today's program with the sad news of the passing of former Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Wilma Mankiller, who passed away in the early morning hours of April 6th at her home in rural Adair County. She was 64 years old. Her passing came a little more than a month after her husband, Charlie Soap, announced that she was diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. And the Cherokee Nation says, our personal and national hearts are heavy with sorrow and sadness with the passing this morning of Wilma Mankiller, said Chad Smith, Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, in a statement released on behalf of the tribe. Mankiller wrote last month that she was prepared for this journey. I decided to issue a statement because I wanted my family and friends to know that I am mentally and spiritually prepared for this journey, a journey that all human beings will take at one time or another, she had written. Mankiller served as Principal Chief from 1985 until retiring in 1995, being reelected twice to the office. And donations in her name can be made at wilmamankiller.com as well as onefiredevelopment.org. Cherokee services will be held on April 10th at 11 a.m. at the Cherokee Nation Cultural Grounds in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And today we have a discussion about Wilma Mankiller with our guest, Mark Trahant from Seattle, Washington.
Mark Trahant, you're one of many individuals in Indian country who had kind of a long-standing relationship with Wilma Mankiller. And tell us a little bit about your memories of her on this sad day, which we got the news that she passed away. Tell us a little bit about how you came about to meet her and how you knew her.
Well, boy, it's been so long, I'm not sure when or where we met. It's been probably close to at least over 20 years, closer to 30 years. And largely, we did work with the Freedom Forum together, so we were at the same meetings really as long as I can remember as an adult. One of my first memories of her, I think it's important to know that she was living on borrowed time. She had faced other serious illnesses and basically faced them down with lymphoma. And in fact, one of the first memories is after a meeting, another woman who's a friend of mine, Nancy Woodhull, called me and said, what could you give Wilma while she was fighting her illness? And I talked to her about some ideas. And we were both so just joyous when Wilma beat that disease. And it wasn't long after that that Nancy died. And so it really, I think Wilma more than anybody recognized how precious this life is and how she was living beyond what people had expected of her, not once, but several times.
My memory of when I first met her was almost like we ran into each other all of a sudden just about everywhere.
Right.
It was 1980s. She became the first female president or chairman of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. Just came back from Navajo country. But the Cherokee Nation, the principal chief, which was historic.
Well, and more than that, she was only the second elected chief. I mean, it was really, talk about a young democracy. Prior to her election as vice chairman, before she became chief, the Cherokees didn't elect their officers.
Was that Ross Swimmer was perhaps the first one or somewhere in that sequence?
And Wilma was his vice chief. Part of that was people appointed by the President of the United States, if you can imagine that.
Wow, that would have been interesting how that might have happened. But she was a barrier breaker.
Yes.
And it seemed to me that all of a sudden we had her as a presenter before the Native American Journalists Association, and she began making news just about everywhere for the next couple of years and from then on.
Right.
She was active all the way back to the occupation of Alcatraz. Her heart seemed to have been in activism. Is that the way you would see her, describe her?
Sure. Well, she was a problem solver. She looked for ways to help people solve ordinary problems. I think one of the richnesses of Wilma's experience was her genuine understanding of going back between rural community life and urban life. She was organizing the Native community in Oakland just the same way she would work with her community back home, and felt that it was the same thing. And that sense of a commitment to people, I think, was wonderful. She also had a wonderful sense of history. Her books talked about the Cherokee experience in a continuum, how things that happened before matter today, and how she was an extension of that.
It's interesting that you brought up how she dealt with the community, because there's two things that Wilma had done for me over the years that I thought were significant. One was in Minneapolis during a huge banquet of people in which even the Belcourt brothers were there, Vern and Clyde Belcourt from the American Indian Movement, and Wilma pointed me out and said, there are people in the community who do work for the community, and there's people who come and grandstand. One of those people, and she named a couple other people, but she named me as saying, I saw him setting up chairs, I saw him getting plates for Elder, I saw him helping take the chairs down. Those are people who work in the community. And I thought that was one of the nicest things she could have ever said about her perception of me, which goes back to that activism in the community, whether it's organizing Oakland or being in Cherokee country. It seemed those are the kinds of things she did. The other thing she said was she sent me a letter in the year 2003 after the indictment of Arlo Looking Cloud and John Graham in the murder of Anna Mae Pick-to-Aquash, and it said simply, Paul, all your years of hard work paid off. Great news about justice for Anna Mae on behalf of many of us who admired her. Thank you. And that's hung on my wall. So she was very humble about, I didn't expect that letter. And it was almost like a woman's follow-up touch.
It's funny you should mention that. I actually tweeted about this morning. But my last email that I received from her was late last year. And when the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act was added to the healthcare reform bill, Wilma sent me a note that said, Mark, I know you had something to do with this. And I was thinking, that's very gracious on her part, but that's far more credit than I deserve. But that's exactly the kind of person she was.
She followed real people, and she followed up on thanking them for their work. And I think the world is a better place because of that. In our final few seconds here, Mark, what would you like to say about Wilma Mankiller?
She was one of the really remarkable American heroes, and I think it's important that it's not just a loss for Indian country, but it's really a loss for the country, and I think she needs to be included in that. I think it's very fitting that the President of the United States took time out today to recognize her contributions, because I think that's appropriate.
Thank you for your time, Mike. Mark, we appreciate it.